Alright, so I haven't made a video in a little bit, kind of been busy, got some progress done. So I got the engine case back together to a short block at this point, and had to do it twice. Had a little bit of stupid happen to me. See if I can find it here. I've just seen it. There we go. I went to put the case together and the little oil slinger shield got folded over as I was putting it together and didn't do no damage. It just messed this thing up. So of course I tried to cut it out, like, man, I don't want to take the case back apart. Got all the sealant on there. I really don't want to take it apart. And of course I had to. So I had to scrape all the silicone off, do it over again, and I didn't have another one to put in it, but it's alright because I got the sand seal pulley set up anyway, so that should keep some of that hopefully behind there. If not, I'm pulling it apart again once we get it all together. I still got to put the oil pump in. I got to do a little clearancing, and a lot of people don't realize this, that on some of these oil pumps, I'll get this gear out of here because it's going to fall and make noise, this little boss area right here will actually hit on the aftermarket cams. You have bolts here instead of rivets. Well, the heads of the bolts are much larger. As you can see, they protrude out from the actual gear, and by quite a bit. They make some that are button heads and got Allen key holes on them and stuff, but this is the style you most commonly see with the cheaper bolt kits. You know, El Cheapo gear usually come with these bolts that have this serrated flat style washer on the backside. So what will happen is you'll put this in there, and if this is not lined up with this, everything will clear. You'll put your motor together, you'll slide your pump in there, everything's hunky-dory, and then you go to turn the motor over and it rotates about, you know, half a turn or so and it locks up. And what more than likely may have happened is that this boss right here that the bottom oil pump drive gear sits on got hit by one of those bolts. So there's two solutions to that. You can either grind the bolts or you can grind the pump. Since this is already together, I'm not going to go and try and grind the bolts. You could probably get to it with some sort of Dremel, but you're going to get shavings in there. So I'm going to end up having to grind the back of the pump. So I'm going to have to grind this down just a little bit. You can see, I don't know if it's kind of shiny there. It's been ground down before. This is a used pump anyway. So just one thing to keep a lookout for if you're ever putting a aftermarket cam in your Volkswagen and you haven't done it before. Best way to do it is to put this up in there when the case halves are split, and you can see how much clearance you need. I did that. I just didn't clearance the bolts, and I didn't clearance this yet. So I'm just going to clearance this more than I need and then do it that way. But engine case is mostly back together. Got the cylinder heads off, and let's see here, look at these. What's kind of neat, these are 040s, and as you can see where the board line is by the carbon deposit there. And let's see if we can get it. There we go, there's a better area. These are actually pretty far enshrouded out from the sides of the valves. Usually there's a good amount of material here, and this has got like none. It's right up to the board on there. And these heads are, it doesn't look like it from this side, but when you look at the rocker box area, they're clean as can be. These were new heads at some point. They're Volkswagen Audi, so they're like a later model, you know, Mexican, but they have the 40x35 valves, so probably like a decade old. But the inside of the motor is really clean. The bearings were really good. It's on its first cut on the case, and it's standard on the crank. So it's been rebuilt at some point. But these heads were pretty decent. So I'm not going to have to do a huge amount of chamber work. I was expecting to have to come way over here. I'm going to have to still do a lot. I'm going to probably pull it up on the top and on the bottom of the chambers there. I'm going to relieve them some more. But the chambers are a decent size too. So some of them, they got really small chambers and just really funky looking. But I'm going to definitely, you know, bring it up more this way and bring the chamber down more on the bottom. And we'll straighten the ports out. You know, see here. Of course, this is all not in good light, so you can't see in there. But basically, I'm going to straighten the port to go this way because this is where the actual port runner is. And now what you'll want to make sure, and I'll probably show more of this later on. Come on, gasket. I think this is a Velcro gasket kit. It has the it's got the metal in there with that paper gasket. Let's move to the better head. What I did when I was younger and not so wise is I'd go in here and you're trying to make the let's see if I can get some light. Should be better here. But anyways, okay, you can see a little bit. You can see the guide boss there, and there's like a wall right here almost along that entire guide box. And if you can move it over a little bit, you can increase the flow because it's kind of like covering half the port. And you don't want to go way back here or anything like that. You're just trying to straighten the little port out. But you need to be careful in this area, especially on a stock head, because what will happen is if you move this over and then you start straightening and pulling that roof up, you'll poke through right here. It's pretty thin right there, so you got to be a little careful when you're doing that. You know, and when I was younger, I'd go hog wild and there'd be a big hole. There'd end up being a hole right at this, in between this fin here by that spark plug. This head has stock valve springs and retainers, little weaky things. I can just push them right down. Exhaust valve springs better than the intakes, believe it or not. And I got the pistons out. This head here, the cylinders were rusted in, so I'm going to have to clean those up and lap them in a little better than the other side. But they're getting oil in the chambers, which means the rings are worn out, which I kind of figured. You know, it was an old motor just sitting in the junkyard. But I got that over there, and I'm not going to be able to use it on this project, but I started making a homemade flow bench. And there's places out there you can look on the internet for plans. It's a basic, simple idea. This one's not going to be able to give me numbers that actually will translate into cubic foot a minute. This will just give me numbers that translate to inches. And the idea is you take a spark plug, knock out the center, use a piece of hose, and then you hook this up in the cylinder. And then you'll open your valve to a certain limit, and this hose will hook to one of the two hoses going here. You're supposed to use clear on both sides, but it's not really going to matter. I'll just switch from one side to the next. And when you hook the vacuum on the bottom of the cylinder from a vacuum cleaner, you're going to pull a vacuum in there. Alright, and what you're checking for is, let's say on the intake, we'll be pulling a vacuum, so we'll be pulling water up the column. And I'll measure it off of inches and stuff later on. Really, it doesn't really matter right now, but I will put measurements on it. And what you're seeing, let's just say we go up to this point in vacuum. Alright, and then we go through and we port our cylinder head. In theory, there should be less vacuum in the port because there should be less restriction in that cylinder because you're measuring the air at the cylinder here. So without a fancy dancy real flow meter, you'll be able to actually see, okay, did I do a difference? So instead of being at this point, you should start moving down, which means you're pulling less vacuum on the spark plug hole and pulling more air through the port. You know, it should be easier. It's like trying to suck through a straw, you know. So this is kind of that right there. There actually is a way to make this turn into a flow bench. It can give you numbers. There's a little orifice plate that you can measure. There's a guy, I think, in Britain that was making them. I don't even know if he still is or not. But you could put it on there, flow it, mark your measurements out, and then you could be able to flow it again and then do some math to figure out, okay, I was at X inches, and, you know, at X inches with this restrictor plate, I flow X, you know, cubic foot a minute, and you can do the math, and that's all fine and dandy. I don't care about numbers, so I just care about making a difference. And so of course this motor right now, this is more of a project for later on. Just figured some people might be interested in that, you know. And there's, like I say, plenty of plans out there, but it's pretty simple. You're just measuring from your spark plug hole. You'll hook it to your hose here. It will pull the column of water up on vacuum, and when you blow through, turn your vacuum around and blow through for the exhaust, it'll push the column of water up. I'm sorry. You know, it will pull the column of water down with vacuum, blow it up with exhaust if you keep using the same line. You know, and that would be great if I used clear on both sides. Then I wouldn't have to switch. I'm going to have to switch because I only got one column. So if I, you know, end up blowing air out the exhaust and hook it up to this side right here, which is the black one, goes up there and comes back down, it would blow the column of water up. But then if I go to use vacuum, it's going to suck the column of water down, and I may run out of room. So I'll probably end up having to switch side to side because I didn't use clear on both sides. But if you look, this is Landscape Mister hose is what I had, and this is the clear hose that Harbor Freight gives you in their boost gauge. So it was all freebie stuff that I had laying around. But I figured I'd give a little update. Coming later this week, front end's coming out. Hopefully cylinder heads will get ported, and I'll go get some piston rings, and the motor will start going back together. And then after the beam's out, cut, narrowed, welded back in, disc brakes will go back on. So just figured I'd give everybody a little update and show you what's going on. We got some progress, just not a whole lot right now. So until then, and once again, I don't know why, when I make videos it rains. Guess I'm the rain man. So hopefully everybody has a really good day and gets out there and works on their Volkswagen and keep trying to get this stuff on the road, man, and have fun doing it. Alright, see y'all later. Bye.